We're very honored.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Sri Jafar Malik from the Government of Kerala. He is the Executive Director of Kudumshri and also the Director of State Information and Public Relations Department. Previously, he was a District Collector of Malappuram and has held many significant positions in the state of Kerala. Thank you, Mr. Malik, for joining us today. Our next panelist is Ms. Kirsten Sommer. She's a lead expert on slum upgrading, informal settlements, land, housing, and shelter management, and she contributes to poverty and inequality reduction and inclusion and participation in slum transformation at the UN Habitat headquarters. Thank you, Kirsten, for joining us. Our next panelist is Mr. Padma Kumar, who's sitting right next to me, with a professional practice since 1986 under Laurie Baker, while he worked for COSFER also in Kerala, and he served at HUDCO for over 26 years. Mr. Padma Kumar established and operated the Laurie Baker Building Center in New Delhi from 1989 to 1999. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence. Our next panelist is Ms. Pani Mekhalai, Senior Planner, Tamil Nadu Urban Habitat Development Board. She has a very remarkable journey. She joined as an assistant planner in Tamil Nadu Slum Clearance Board in 1997, and she presently works as a senior planner and heads the planning wing of TNUHDB. Thank you, Ms. Pani Mekhalai. And our final panelist is Ms. Aparna Das from GIZ. She's a senior advisor with GIZ India for the last 10 years. She received her master's degree in urban development planning and from Development Planning Unit at UCL. And Aparna also received a first
land which is being occupied. Sometimes it is government land, sometimes it is private land. One approach could be, can we provide enough municipal services? Can we provide other basic services like road, electricity, water, other social services, and improve the neighborhood? That can be one approach. Second could be what has been tried in ISSR, what it has been tried in more so in metros, not in smaller cities, that capitalizing on the land value, asset of the land, can we provide housing and then use the remaining land to monetize to provide for the costing and provide basic services in the process. Then while we are doing it, we are dealing with two things. One, in doing this, we should not be promoting more slums in the thought that if this gets regularized, then wherever new slums come, they will also get regularized in due course. One of the basic problems people from municipalities, people from cutting edge administration have been facing, this policy that slum rehabilitation will be provided to those who are having residency before a cutoff date. And cutoff date is usually 15 years, 20 years ago than today. So it creates a kind of economy that whoever is occupying a place for more than, let's say, 15, 20 years, he will be regularized, and it promotes more people to occupy new places in the hope that it will be regularized 20 years after. So this is a very fine balance. We have to deal at the cutting edge level. But one of the aspects what Gautam Bhanji mentioned in plenary also, that we have discussed many times, that people do not find housing because of rate or quality of the house. One of the primary preference factor is where is the employment, where they have to go for work. Any place closer to workplace is always preferred, even if the quality of housing is going down. This is probably one of the major reasons why many of the slums have been continuing despite so much development, because they are very much closer to the places where employment opportunities are there. So, when we are talking about future slum proofing of cities, how do we ensure that new housing that comes up is actually mixed one, where LIG, HIG, MIG, EWS housing, they are provided in a healthy mix, and how we can provide it through policy push. How we can do that? Because for me, if you ask my personal opinion, we are actually dealing with a running water problem where your pipe is choked and sink is full, but instead of closing the tap first, we are trying to mop up the floor. We are treating the symptoms rather than identifying the problem. Why, despite so much of slum redevelopment, more and slum population is not decreasing per se. That means if in your kitchen sink water is flowing, and if we don't close the tap first, then whatever do the mopping exercise we do, there will be enough water in the sink and kitchen floor. So these are 3-4 different dimensions that we will be probably discussing, not only in this session, but there is another session on slum redevelopment, policies, financial implications. And we want to listen experts, how we can deal with it, how we can address demand side as well as supply side of the issue. Because two things to my mind are very basic to the discussion. One, right to dignified living. That is one of the very basic thing. And whatever policies we take, that should decrease the number of present slums and also decrease the future slum formulation. So that is a very difficult balance to achieve, but if we have right mix of policies, probably we can achieve that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Mr. Narayan. You really set the stage so prolifically. And we can, without actually further ado, I will call on the first speaker, Mr. Patrick Ranasinghe. Patrick, my first question to you is driven by what Habitat for Humanity stands for, where everyone needs a decent place to live, and SDG 11.1 is the main focus. So with that in mind, what are the top 3 lessons that you can highlight from your experience in the Global South that applies to bringing transformative change in slum redevelopment projects? Over to you, Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, moderator. And warm greetings and namaste to my fellow panelists and the audience. It's a great question because I would love to actually elaborate beyond Habitat for Humanity International. I also want to say that I do not have all the answers, but having grown up in the Global South and engaged hundreds of communities in more than 50 countries over 20 years, I'm pleased to share my experience. So let me begin, the moderator, by sharing my very first lesson. You asked about 3 lessons from the Global South. I think it's fair to say that with the best intentions, we will fail if we do not put people at the center of our interventions. In the context of slum redevelopment, those living in slums should be at the center of our interventions. And I know I'm stating the obvious, but this is the point. If we don't, our efforts will not enable the pursuit of transformation in any meaningful way. By putting people at the center, we can also help address issues of what we consider systemic inequities or structural deficiencies that exist, and they do exist. Another way of putting this across is that a people-centered approach helps mitigate issues of exclusion. It is an inclusive approach, as we know, that paves the way to pursue transformation. So these are more general lessons when it comes to the pursuit of transformation. Another important fact, as far as the first lesson is concerned, I would say this: while it is great that there are multiple actors at play desiring meaningful outcomes concerning transformation, the competing agendas of these actors can diminish the importance of communities. A few years ago, I was really inspired when I heard a civil society leader who said, "We should leave our egos and logos at the door if CSOs," and he was specifically speaking to CSOs, "if civil society organizations are intentional about respecting the primacy of our communities in pursuing transformation." So true. Very quickly, the second lesson: the contribution of leadership and innovation from the Global South is often diminished or discounted. Organizations from the Global South, including community-based organizations, have been engaged in groundbreaking innovation work and yet continue to be engaged at a very transactional level by their northern counterparts. If I may just take a minute to just describe my own personal experience. About 15, 16 years ago, I was leading a national NGO in Sri Lanka, where I'm originally from. And our organization was recognized for doing some groundbreaking work, some pioneering work. But my lament is that oftentimes when we were engaged, it would be at a very transactional level, as subcontractors of a grant. Very rarely would someone come up to me or my colleagues and say, "Can we engage you at the thought leadership level or at the co-creation level?" The pertinent question, therefore, is how can we meaningfully pursue transformation without appreciating and respecting the value added of leadership from the Global South? That is why Habitat for Humanity International, through its innovation arm, the Tuviliga Center for Innovation, has prioritized and enabled local entrepreneurs to promote innovation, to promote local ownership, so that outcomes would actually be owned by our community-based organizations. And my third and final lesson is this: partnerships are an imperative, and I'm sure you're talking a lot about partnerships in this discourse. While P4 partnerships, that is public, private, and people-centered partnerships, are core to driving transformation, a critical lesson for me over the years has been not all partnerships are equal. Per my first point, the importance of people, community-centered approach is pivotal. I would also say how we engage governments in pursuing transformation is critical. I have seen repeatedly the profound impact governments have in supporting transformation in partnership with civil society organizations. Let us face it, the nature of government engagement concerning transformation influences what is done or not done. And in this context, I just want to take this opportunity to thank the Government of India for engaging the various actors in this important discourse concerning slums and the transformation of slums. And moderator, if I may just take one more minute, and I just want to, in closing, echo 3 organizational values that shape Habitat for Humanity International and apply these in the context of our conversation here. The 3 values being humility, courage, and accountability. And I'll tell you why this is important. For us, humility is to acknowledge that we do not have all the answers to the housing deficit, including the plight of the 1 billion who live in informal settlements. We also must acknowledge that our interventions we haven't always gotten right, and that's important to acknowledge it. And that is part of a posture of humility. Courage tells us that we need to have the courage to pursue slum transformation more boldly. We recognize that this is not going to be always easy, but this would absolutely be the right thing to do on behalf of the billion or so people. And accountability for us is really pursuing slum transformation that requires accountability across the ecosystem. And I would say at a greater level of accountability, that a greater level of accountability is owed to the populations living in slums. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me and Habitat for Humanity International to be part of this very important conversation.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing those lessons with us. Very pertinent and very important for us to discuss them. And I can see similarities of what you just brought to the table and what other speakers are going to emphasize on and build the story, especially keeping people at the center. So thank you. And actually, you've given us a very good segue to the next speaker on meaningful partnerships. So with that, I'll invite Mr. Jafar Malik now. And my question to you this afternoon is that with your experience of running Kudumshri, what, in your opinion, are scalable models of context-specific engagement and establishing local partnerships? So if you can elaborate on your experience, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all, respected chair and my fellow panelists and all the participants present here. I am very delighted to be part of this panel, especially on the topic of community involvement, which I have been asked to put my ideas into. Before I come to the specific points which moderator has asked, I'll just brief about Kudumbushri. I think most of the people in this hall might be knowing what is Kudumbushri, but for the benefit of others who don't know. So Kudumbushri, as far as PMAY is concerned, Kudumbushri is the mission which is implementing it in Kerala. But beyond PMAY, Kudumbushri is a community network of almost 3 lakh SHGs and 46 lakh families in Kerala. It is women-oriented, women-based network. Started in 1998 as a poverty eradication mission, but later from the year 2005 onwards, Kudumbushri has gone into many other areas, including livelihood, including skilling, including many other initiatives of Government of Kerala, and now implementing more than 5 centrally sponsored schemes, including NULM, NRLM, DDU, GKY, and PMAY. So this was the brief of Kudumbushri. I have been in Kudumbushri for a very short time. It is hardly 2 months that I have joined Kudumbushri, but yeah, from 98 onwards, from the beginning onwards, if you see the kind of initiatives Kudumbushri have taken, so it gives me a good honor to be speaking on behalf of Kudumbushri here. So I'll come to the points which moderator has put forward. So basically, the point which I want to highlight in this August gathering is that community participation in different stage of implementation, including planning, including identification of beneficiaries, including the implementation, construction, and later post-construction. So all these stages involving community is the basic success of Kudumbushri projects in Kerala. I'll just give you an example that when we go for let's take example of BLC. So from the identification of beneficiaries, it's not only that we take help of some agency and then prepare a list, and which later some allegations come against that list that it was not proper or many non-genuine persons have appeared in the list like that. But Kudumbushri, with the strong network of Kudumbushri, from the household level to ward level to local body level, we do the thorough check through that community network whether these are the genuine beneficiaries or not, whether someone who has appeared in the list are really deserving as a beneficiary or not. So that is one thing which is coming at planning level. Similarly, at planning level only, a thorough consultation through the ward sabhas where Kudumbushri members are also participants. Good thing in Kerala with Kudumbushri is that local bodies and Kudumbushris are interconnected. Like members of Kudumbushri becomes members of local bodies, and similarly like former members of local bodies will join Kudumbushri later. So it's like they are well connected with local bodies. So when we conduct Ward Sabha and all, like we can get good overview or good feedback about the beneficiary or their family, their background, their socio-economic background, everything. And Kudumbashree has also done socio-economic survey of urban areas. So we also have details that which all beneficiaries can come. So this is about the planning. Now, one more thing at the planning level itself, because from the morning session and just before me, Honorable Chair and our panelists also focused on providing, like connecting livelihood with housing. So, as you all know, state of Kerala has its own housing scheme, which is launched in 2017 called LIFE. So, LIFE, the very purpose of giving name LIFE to a housing scheme. LIFE means livelihood inclusion and financial empowerment. So, calling a housing scheme LIFE itself shows that we do not want to limit housing only to housing. It is beyond housing. You have to include livelihood in that. You have to include mobility in that, because in the previous session somebody mentioned that if you are giving houses to a person living at certain point and 20 kilometers away from that, obviously you will not be willing to move to that place. So you have to ensure mobility in that aspect. You have to ensure livelihood in that aspect. So considering all these facts from the planning stage and then taking it to the implementation. So implementation also again the same thing. Ward Sabha or the community network will be deeply involved in the implementation also. Mr. Padma Kumar is here, so he'll be talking about a specific projects also and technical side of that. So I'm not going into much detail of a project, but through the community network we can ensure that the implementation is also pro-community. It is not that after completing everything we are going to community and telling them this is the house, just go and occupy that. Rather than doing that, we are involving community or involving community-oriented organizations at every level of implementation also. And then there will be local level monitoring of the project at every stage, how much is completed, how much is remaining, funding, and then after that, social audit of that. So this ensures that at every level of implementation also community is involved. Now coming to the post-construction, as I said, housing is not only housing, but you have to think about many other aspects also when you are ensuring housing. So just to give you an example, in Trivandrum, when one apartment, like one slum rehabilitation was planned, and it was basically fisherman community. So what they did was that they brought some kind of fishing-based industries near to that place, like providing some kind of processing units, fish-based processing units, so that those people can connect to livelihood also. Because when we are asking them to shift to a particular place, they should find something nearby to that place of their livelihood. So thinking in that model post construction, if we think we'll like Tamil Nadu sir said in that they're not willing to occupy because they don't feel connected to because of their livelihood or because of their particular area of interest. They don't feel connected to that. So if we consider that part in the beginning, maybe we can connect them more to that. And one more good thing which Kudumbashree is ensuring that all these beneficiaries who get houses post construction or post their, like once they get the houses, we bring them to community network. Like every family who has got house in DLC, we ensure that they become community member of Kudumbashree. By that, we connect them to other skills, like for example, NULM. NULM, we can give them skilling. NULM, we can give them many other, even Kudumbashree's own schemes like linkage loan and those livelihood, we can promote enterprises through them. So by bringing them to the network, Kudumbashree is not only increasing Kudumbashree network, but also taking care of their demand also. So that two-way activity which is happening there, and convergence with other schemes like state insurance scheme. We make sure that all the beneficiaries who complete their houses will get insurance for their houses. Similarly, Government of India subsidy schemes for gas cylinders. Similarly, state government, if any other scheme is there in any area, we make sure that beneficiaries are taken from the same list, and then it's not only that house they are getting, it's like broader advantages that they are getting through this scheme. So just to sum up, learnings or key factors which we can take or which can be tried in other states also. One is obviously it should be need-based participation. We should ensure that demand should come from community, and also at the planning level we have to ensure that they also get involved in the planning at every stage. Second thing, sustainable model, like we have to link it to their livelihood, we have to link it to their area of interest, then only we can, and then one important factor I forgot is that trust, like building of trust. There might be examples in many schemes where we have not involved community and we prepare some project and we go and implement, and then later they feel that this is not what we promised in the beginning. So trust deficit will come, and that will obviously like affect the image of further projects which we are going to bring. So trust should be there. Incremental housing model. I think the model which Mr. Padma Kumar will be talking about is that incremental housing. Later, like today we are giving them house. What about after 10 years? When they feel, when their family gets like divided, or when their new family members comes, how are they going to survive on the same housing? So incremental housing, and then linking it with other benefits. I'm not giving any specific examples because I just wanted to highlight on these 2-3 important points. Once again, just to sum up, housing should not be only housing. It should cover many other aspects of their life, like livelihood mainly, and then mobility, financial inclusion, and many other things. So these are my takes on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very eloquently described. You threaded together all aspects of housing, right from community partnerships and how they need to get embedded in all stages of planning to implementation, and of course post-implementation also. And your emphasis on how seamlessly you integrate community networks with municipal partners and municipal frameworks is commendable. So thank you for bringing that to the forum. All right, so we now move from Kerala to Tamil Nadu. And I'll invite Ms. Mani Mithilai now. Question I have for you is, was Tamil Nadu has been a pioneer and has seen significant investments in sites and services approach over the last 3 decades almost. What have been key strategies that have worked for the integration of neighborhoods, both in the inner city and of course what we call the greenfield projects? And how do you rate the trajectory of this success of the strategies? Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, Moderator, and the co-panelists, and all the other participants. This is the famous scheme which is represented from Tamil Nadu under the funding assistance of World Bank. Earlier in 70s to 90s, it was a very successful scheme. It's called Sites and Services Scheme, and the core unit will be given along with the infrastructure facilities, and further cash loan was also arranged through some nationalized banks. So this was very helpful in various aspects. One is on the poor people who always we say that there is no access to the land and there is no access to the finance, which we were discussing in the morning also. Though it's a very big dream for the people to own a house. So sites and services was very helpful for the poor people especially to have a house with easy facilitation from the government side, like with the land tenure and with the infrastructure facilities, they can immediately go and settle down in the new houses. If they want, the incremental housing concept was also facilitated in that scheme. It was designed in such a way, even the poor or other income groups, according to the future need, they can extend their houses, and further the houses are also facilitated for them as a income generating scheme. So because the additional houses which they can always rent it out and get income from there, thereby the demand and supply side also is taken care. But slowly it has lost its charm mainly because of the main reason on the land cost. Land cost is very high, And mostly these schemes cannot be imagined within the city. Even morning our housing secretary was saying, principal secretary was saying that the land has become very costly and it's a scarce resources also. So with this, we were not able to further highlight on the sites and services scheme, and mainly it can be built up, brought in the peri-urban areas and the new emerging urbanizing areas. There the challenge again is the infrastructure. So the far you go, the trunk infrastructure has to be provided. So for that the government has to invest more on that. So these are the trade-off between the land and the infrastructure and the beneficiaries. The same way the land cost will be less comparatively with the Chennai, with the city core and the other extended areas. But again, investing on the infrastructure and taking people there is a problem. Then we have to, as a planners, planners and urban developers, we have to think about the other infrastructure. So one site scheme which was very famous is Arumbakam scheme, where you can see the scheme was located in the main, along with the main arterial roads, and then the other major infrastructures like Coimbatore, the market, vegetable market and flower markets were brought in, and bus terminals, major bus terminals, bus terminals was brought in. So these kind of attractions are also needed for the success of the sites and services scheme. And apart from that, this is coordinated with CMDA and especially in Chennai, we had 10 schemes and almost all the schemes were successful except two schemes because of the road connectivity and the distance from the city core. When also representing TMU HDB, the lessons which we learn from sites and services scheme, it's a good scheme. Considering the land and other infrastructure facilities, it can be integrated with the in future it can be integrated with the town planning schemes, like the land pooling will be there. So the land will be available wherein the government have to integrate with the infrastructure facilities. So those kind of schemes can be brought in as a sites and services concept can be integrated with that. So affordable housing becomes more important nowadays. The core unit and the infrastructure facilities should be integrated with the concept like sites and services scheme. It's a very good concept, and TMU HDB is mainly now it is as from Kerala we experience so much from the beneficiary participation which we lack. See, whatever you said, I was remembering my principal secretary used to say beneficiary is the important one, so which we lost in many of the past years. Now we are slowly bringing back to the beneficiary centered planning and the development, wherein the initial concentration is on the resident welfare associations, and then the concept of maintenance the units and further taking up the scheme is also very important. Now we are allotment is also being made to the women, and we can proudly say it is the women benefited schemes which we are implementing. And the long way we have traveled is from in situ development, where the slums are cleared and then the tenements are constructed, and slowly the R&R schemes, the resettlement has also started happening, because Chennai has major 4 waterways. Along the 4 waterways there were a lot of encroachments, so we are bringing them to the other housing projects. There the challenge is participation of the beneficiaries, that we are slowly we are telling them like these are the areas in which the schemes are being built according to their comfort and the livelihood support, they can come back. And the typology difference, now under the World Bank assistance, we have started many new concepts. Under that, one is the segmented housing. So we don't want to give a proper uniform design, and we are slowly changing the concept into a different typology, wherein 250 square feet, 350, 400, in between type of, that is single unit house, a multi-purpose room with a kitchen or something like that. So according to the affordability, we are changing the typology also. So this is how we traveled from TNU, from the earlier days. And I'm very happy to say that TNSCB, earlier called as Tamil Nadu Slum Clearance Board, our present government has successfully changed the name into Tamil Nadu Urban Habitat Development Board. So that itself shows the transformation, how we treat the slums, and we no more call them as a slums, we call them as urban poor, and their habitat is very important. We have a community development wing within our board. So we do a lot of livelihood support, facilitating livelihood projects in coordination with the NULM. Again, the beneficiary participation is a big challenge. We are slowly going back, and from the initial stage, we want to concentrate on the identification of the beneficiaries. The lessons we learned is we should not go far away from the city core, and most of the schemes getting unoccupied because of the distance from the core city. And mainly, as I was saying, like from Kerala, the integration based on the occupation is very important. So we should try to get a socio-economic survey and the occupation, what they are doing it, and majority, some livelihood support activities have to be brought in along with that scheme. So that will become the successful story. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What a remarkable story of transformation of the thought behind the organization also to change the name from clearance. So that of course shows that the focus changed to more habitat development, which linking it to infrastructure, linking it to employment, as well as obviously providing a house.
Ma'am, Makwana sir wants to say something.
Sure, please.
Though our senior planners, he has covered many important aspects. Actually, the cities like Chennai, Mumbai, and maybe even Cochin and Trivandrum also, we have another one peculiar issue of CRZ. Now, what has happened in 2019, in month of February, we amended our building rules. And then we came with the combined development and building rules of 2019. And in that means we did lot of FSI relaxation and those things. But just 15 days before, Environment Ministries, that CRZ notification came. And that CRZ notification, what it says, whatever is the earlier your building rules, and in that whatever was the FSI, that will only prevail. So today, the places where we are eligible to get 3.25 FSI, we have to restrict our construction for 2 FSI only. Though there is a provision that means you approach Government of India, Environment and Forest Ministry, and get a separate notification. But our request is that means Ministry may take up with Environment Ministry if they can give blanket clearance. Because anyhow they are giving, it's not that they are not giving. They are giving it to Miss Maharashtra, they have given to another couple of states. So if that kind of, in that particular time, whatever, as only for affordable housing, we don't want for all other things, that other things, the normal procedure will be followed. But for affordable housing schemes, if in building rules, whatever FSI is prevailing with, that FSI will prevail. So what will happen, this urban poor, they will get their housing within that same area. So suppose today I am having 100 houses there, we can state may construct 200, 250 houses, and either it can be given to the private player also, as well as even we can state may give to the urban poor. So that is Housing Ministry may kindly take up with Government of India. And yes, means what Kudum Sri, and we have learned lessons from Kudum Sri only. Yeah, unless and until beneficiaries are identified upfront, beneficiaries' involvement is there during time of implementation of the scheme, it will be extremely difficult for us to provide them quality houses. So these lessons we have learned, and that's why if you will see during this year, we have not taken up too many AHP housing, but we have gone for more beneficiary-led construction, and we have concentrated only in identifying the beneficiaries and providing this accommodation, means the house, allotment of the house. So this is what, and instead actually we have surrendered also some of the houses, because where we are finding that it's quite far away from the means main city, so there is no point in unnecessarily wasting government resources. So a beneficiary involvement, rather community involvement upfront is very much needed, and if it will be done, then definitely means AHP scheme will be more successful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Right. So, moving on with our next panelist, Mr. Padma Kumar. The question we have for you is, what are new and cutting-edge design elements that will ensure that these redeveloped slums have a sustainable future? And do you see that there is an option to include green jobs in this upgradation agenda? Thank you.
Namaskaram to everyone. Thanks for getting us here, me and the first four Larry Baker Center, which I represent, to speak at this conclave. I would like to take the help of presentation to discuss what I wish to put forth. Much has been already discussed, most of the points, yet the Karimadam colony housing experience is around which I'll build my two arguments, basically on participation in design, planning, and even construction, even beyond construction. This, I must also say that it may not be the most appropriate solution for large cities. While the issues in the largest cities are terrible, issues in the middle-sized and small urban centers can't be allowed to aggravate, including taking measures to stop new slums from happening. I will reframe this question slightly to say that what are the new and cutting-edge design elements that will ensure these upgraded slums to continue improve. It should continue improving. Sustainability may not be the right word, I suppose. And the design elements here, I would suggest that there are two parts to this. One is design of the process and the design of the product. We should see them separately. Community-driven planning, community-driven maintenance of the facility, that is pre and post-construction involvement is extremely crucial. As Mr. Jafar Malik has already explained, Kudumbashree has given us much support in making this happen. Time and resources spent on collaborative and participatory planning is well spent in laying the foundations for a successful slum redevelopment project. I'll come to focus on the design of the product now. Design of the product should ensure adequate spaces, both in quality and quantity, both indoor and outdoor. Also, flexibility which facilitate continued improvement, environmentally, economically, and socially. We were discussing about FSI controls, etc. my suggestion is that we shouldn't be possibly looking at FSI controls. We should be looking at density controls in terms of persons per hectare of land. Land, that is one key parameter. The second is that is built or enclosed space per person. How much is adequate to ensure the right level of habitat? The third parameter is space, public open space available per person. We should be controlling all kinds of development, of course, like this only, specifically some redevelopment program, some improvement programs, because there, unfortunately, the tendency is to push more and more people and dwelling units into the limited space that is available, or even at times to reduce that limited space further so that we can come up with cross-subsidization projects with commercial development, etc. And the designs should be must fulfill socio-cultural and psychological and physical requirements. We shouldn't be only looking at physical requirements or at livelihood requirements or at cultural requirements. We should put everything together and try to move towards holistic sustainability, holistic designs. Here at Karimadam project, the main stakeholders were primarily the people, the community-based organizations, mainly Kudumbashree units at various levels. Now the smallest unit of Kudumbashree has 10 members. That's all. It's a very small, closely knit unit which come together to make larger units. So, working at grassroots level, reaching every individual almost becomes practicable. Then there were social and political leaders who were very much part of the process of designing. The Thiruvananthapuram, that's commonly known as Trivandrum Municipal Corporation, and the agencies which were building it as cost for. We all worked together for a very long time, even to get good foothold in the society, because as you know, slums have their own dynamics. They don't really accept people from outside. The first impediment was to break that barrier and become a part of the people so that we could work together to make very positive outcome. And the much needed contextual customization, which we have been talking about, we need that from varying ground level requirements of different kinds of cities, of settlements, of people. So that was mainly facilitated through a design which fostered additions, customization and flexibility. It's not one product which they have to live with till the end of their lives. And I must say this was the closest we could ever get to the elusive per capita space provision idea which we have been trying to push again and again, which never happens, or which will never ever happen, I suppose. The idea is to provide a specific space to each person depending on the family size. So the design, the development lends itself to multiple social and livelihood activities. Earlier, people used to get together, mainly women, around wells, water bodies, later around public taps, now where? So we have to design such spaces. And for instance, it could be work centers, Anganwadis, kiosks, marketplaces, training facilities, which all we have built into this perimodern development. Another important social facility that was added was study centers. Because many a time students, children have not such very conducive environment at home to learn. You know, various social issues, father is drunk or whatnot, all kinds of issues we know about. So if they have to move forward in their lives, what is required is education. As correctly almost all the women during our initial survey said, we want our children to go forward, get educated. So the only provision we could think of then, and it is working out now, giving good results, is to provide study centers dispersed across the place. And I must say, it may sound a little delicate, but we require dedicated facilities for women, girls, and children. It's not a good idea to segregate. But if we don't think about this now, there is a possibility which happens, which I've seen, that they are edged out. If there is a common facility, which is the best thing to have for girls and boys to study together, we see, because of various complications in the society, that girls are edged out. So it would be a good idea to have dedicated facilities. Just to take a quick look at the design itself, the development is in 4 floors. The lowest floor has 8 units. The first floor has 6 units with open spaces, as you could see the colored area at edges. And the third floor again has 4 units with open spaces. Second floor, third floor has 2 units with open spaces. So what you see here is space available for future addition, for incremental development. And it is the space is available to every unit. We get an idea from the technical elevation drawing here. The development looked soon after construction somewhat like this. So nothing much has been built on the bare basic development. And there now it started evolving with additional spaces being built. More of, excuse me, my dear cameraman, can you please move? I am not able to see. Yeah. Thank you. So here we can see on the ground floor there is extension happening. On the first floor, the spaces which were given have been built on. Some of them built, some of them used it as open spaces, but there is space for overflowing requirements, livelihood activities, study. Yes. Yes.
How did you define who gets the right to expand?
Actually, if we go into the details of the design, out of 20 units which are housed in this one block, except 2 units, all of them have provision for expansion, except 2 units. And because it is architecturally, it's very difficult to figure out expansion space for every unit. So what we did in this case was we gave extra space in advance to them. So they are yes. And to add to that, the Kudumbashree unit and people together came, thought about it and decided who required more space for expansion. So the allocation also happened accordingly.
Maybe since we are running a bit late,
I'll finish.
we have to start this session also on time. So
Yes, yes.
it would be a good idea.
So I'll just take you through some of the pictures. A person has even found enough space for building a small Miyawaki forest in there. And the Anganwadi looks like this. There is a waste segregation and management unit where the workers, the people of the slum work. And that's about it. The whole idea came from Larry Baker's design, which I explained in the book, Are Slums Inevitable? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Padma Kumar. Quite enlightening how people evolve and how spaces evolve, and of course bringing our attention back to space per person, so both open space as well as habitation space. So we'll move to our next speaker, and I know everybody is probably getting hungry by now, but we have two more speakers and a wrap up, and we'll try to be as quick as possible. I'm sorry, Aparna. So with that, I'll ask my next question to Aparna Das. With your very unique background in the affordable housing space, land legislation and land tenure in urban areas, do you think that there are opportunities to convert underutilized urban land to affordable housing, or look at newer models for employing underutilized housing pockets? Over to you, Aparna.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair, afternoon, Mansi, and all the attendants here. I would like to be very quick, but one of the skills that I don't have is words per second. So I try, but I can only speak maybe 30 words per second kind of a speed. But I want to make few points. One is, it's a fantastic platform that the ministry has provided us. I was part of the deliberation before on the policy dialogue, and this is something as a big opportunity. And I really thank you for this, because this allows us to see the 360-degree point of view. You know, so what are the constraints? And this also removes this idea of that nobody is a villain, you know. So you put yourself in different shoes and then you come out with a solution. So I begin, as I have very limited time, I begin with this word called underutilized urban land. You know, when you are saying about regeneration, so I highlighted that particular thing of underutilized. It all depends on the approach that one takes. Like it can be underutilized pertaining to real estate value, pertaining to the development rights, or pertaining to social function of land. Now, when you put the approach as social function of land, the entire calculation of what is the value of that land changes. So I think this is where we have to come up with a first decide on the approach. Are we only talking about the real estate value of the land, that whether it is giving us the maximum or not, or are we also talking about and conceptualizing land as having a social function? Now, I think Government of India and in our constitution, land is having social function. But it is not being articulated like that explicitly. It is implicit. I am wondering whether in PMAY-2 we can make this a bit more explicit. That, you know, we would only take decisions with the approach that land has a social function, and with that we take then the further decisions. So that's one thing that I'm just wondering whether that could be a way ahead of coming out of this contestation. The second thing is about the tenurial rights. I'm just kind of sticking to my question that is being asked. So I would say, you know, if you take the tenure rights as ownership rights and then the user right, that makes a lot of difference. The moment we say ownership right, we get into the legal regime. And legal regime is not really easy to put in place. Although we all would agree that we want to reach there, but it is not a kind of a jump to that gold standard immediately. It takes a process. So if it is a user right, then what are the other options that we have? What are the different tenurial models that we can work on? And I think in this particular, we have not had enough knowledge or have not had enough experimentation. We are still trying to, which is good, giving the individual private property rights, which is definitely the gold standard, and we would all like to have that. But simultaneously, especially in the bigger cities, where user rights are politically negotiated, I think different kinds of tenurial models can be explored further. That's my second point, and I was just wondering, globally, if you see there is a community land trust, there is a many other models, if we can experiment on that in the PMAY-2. If I come to the housing market then, and if you see the slum redevelopment, and if we do enough study on that, what we would find is large proportion of people are living on rent. And these are all informal rental arrangements. This does not have any formal contract. There is nothing declared about it. These are all informal. Now, working and acknowledging that we are working in the backdrop of informality, now how do we address this rental housing issue? I mean, that is going to be a big exploration that we have to make. I'm very happy that, rental housing has now got acknowledged, mainstreamed, so we are having ARSC. But then informal rental housing, I think, is still the big black box that we have to unravel. And as I don't have much time, I'm just wanting to make 2 more points, and I stop there. It's also very critical that, how are we making this slum transformation? When we are making the slum transformation or redevelopment, I think the process is more important than where we land finally. If the process is not just transition, I think we are missing a huge block there. I think the principles of just transition has to be mainstreamed in PMAY-2. And when I say just transition, I mean is that it has to be very inclusive. It has to acknowledge people who are informally employed, and all the principles of just transition has to be mainstreamed. So that's my one big block that I'm trying to push this. And to make just transitions, you need institutions. You need public institutions, and I think to an extent in the urban sector, we have a very strong institutions, at least in India, when we are talking about rural areas. But when it comes to urban areas, those urban institutions, I think, are still missing. And I link this point with capacity, that please train people who can then appreciate just transition, slum redevelopment, because when we are talking spatial planning, these are afterthoughts. The slums, we stitch it to the fabric. We do not make the planning around the slums. They come as an afterthought, because that's the way the training and the case study formulations are done. So I think that's again a big block where Niti Aayog has already taken some steps, and I think Tamil Nadu is doing lots of work on that front. How to train new set of urban planners with those new skills who would be able to function in those institutions and make this kind of a slum transformations or slum redevelopment possible. I would like to use the word transformation, because once they are developed, there are no more slums then, there would be something very different. So I think this is what I have time for. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Aparna. Very, very pertinent again to bring in the continuum of land rights to our conversation, and also to talk about upskilling of new planners and capacity building in that space. So thank you for your thoughts. We'll move to our last speaker, Kirsten. You can't see her. Yes, now I can. So you have a tough job, Kirsten, to to thread this all together. So my question to you is that, drawing from the new urban agenda, what elements should a comprehensive slum redevelopment program entail, and what benefits do public spaces and streets bring for transformation within these settlements?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you also for this opportunity, and congratulations for putting this important meeting together. So yeah, we were asking about the relevance also linked to the new urban agenda and the global level, also the sustainable development goals. So what we're discussing today is really of highest value, because we're in the middle of the decade of action, and globally we have 1 billion slum dwellers and 3 billion if no action is taken by 2050. That means we would need 183,000 people housed every day. So as one of the panel members was saying, the numbers are not decreasing, the numbers are increasing, and the scale is enormous. So what we really see as entry point also with the new urban agenda and in the decade of action, where we really have this call for scaling, for transformation on the ground, we see the 4 dimensions being particularly relevant for multi-pronged approach to slum transformation redevelopment. Slum transformation was mentioned quite a bit in the panel, and we sort of welcome also the shift to, let's say, a higher ambition of really recognizing informal settlement as part of our city, and then also bringing the same attention and also the same excellence of expertise to those settlements. So 4 dimensions, which are also very much aligned with the new urban agenda and have come very strongly out of the panel. So it was really a very rich panel with many points. The first point is reduction of poverty. So there was the mentioning of importance of creating job opportunities, local economic development, also the location where those settlements are integrated in the city, so that we really foster urban prosperity. The second one is inequalities. We already, the reduction of inequalities, really have spatial equal development for spatial justice. And here is also very important, as we heard already, the comprehensive packages, where we look at, really at a holistic approach to informal settlements. That was also mentioned as the term already, where we have integrated packages, including mobility, service provision, public spaces. I mean, much has been mentioned, of course, housing as well, social infrastructure, a very important element within as well. Then the third one being exclusion, that we need to transform to inclusion. And here were the messages around processes, multi-level governance, participatory governance, and really the horizontal and vertical integration of institutions, but also creating systems really to connect to people, and have with that also a holistic, inclusive approach towards designing interventions and also planning ahead, and particularly also the strategic participatory planning, one of the instruments to translate it and inform then also the transformation or the impact on the ground. And the fourth one is degradation, maybe a point that hasn't come as strongly out, but the environmental sustainability is also a key one. Of course, we are in a climate crisis, so everything we do should also consider the planet. So we are to look at actions that have climate smart solutions, but of course also looking at actions that are providing environmental sustainability in terms of waste management, which then also have very often multiple impacts, such as for preventing flooding through block drainage and other things. So these 4 dimensions are really key in the new urban agenda and have come out very strongly in this. And then it's about the translation of those dimensions. And one important point here is the localization. Also, that has come out strongly in the discussions, where we have the let's say the opportunity for diversity and flexibility, the contextualization, that we respond to the needs on the ground. So again, also this balance between creating the processes and the product. And that, we would almost say, should be the balance between space and people. So that actually our vision, we want to shape cities for all, where human potentials and spaces thrive in harmony. So where we really bring the two together and promote also continuum, as mentioned, that speaks to the to the capacity and the contextualized situation of people living in informal settlement. And and then also with the different entry points that were mentioned, while we're speaking about comprehensive packages, and that should be integrated in our strategic planning. There should also be entry points that allow rapid service delivery, for example, as mentioned, the municipal services. So one really key message is also that we need to act now. So with a bigger vision and a comprehensive implementation framework, within that also accountability and long-term commitment, we need action that is translated now, and also catalytic actions in a way that it invites many stakeholders to come on board. PPPs were mentioned here, but of course the private sector has to play an important role, and public finance to leverage the potential of private sector partners, and also people are made to be connected in the end to benefit from private sector engagement in different ways, including also, of course, the job creation. So yeah, the vision is really to have a cities for all. So where really everything we do sits in the context of a whole city development, and where we talk about rather neighborhoods and not just houses in the sense of shelter, but where we have connected neighborhoods that are dynamic, where the positive attributes of informal settlement are leveraged and the negative are overcome towards really healthy, sustainable, safe, resilient, and dynamic neighborhoods. So with that, we actually just concluded the Global Action Plan Conference with the government of South Africa, like a global initiative to bring the new urban agenda and the sustainable development goals into the stronger context of informal settlement, and accelerate the implementation. And the resolution here, with also partners in this panel being present during the conference, had several priority pillars. So one was multi-level participatory governance, spatial planning, data and monitoring, also something that was mentioned here. Policies that allow for integrated strategic implementation framework, comprehensive packages that can be flexibly adapted to the local context, finance that matches that process, the process of multi-level participatory governance and the comprehensive packages, and bring in also multiple partners to invest, so are really catalytically designed. And land, one important element that was mentioned, and with that also the continuum of land rights, property rights, community resilience and empowerment, because as was said, I mean, we invest in people now, they will be better equipped to also afford services and infrastructure and housing we would like to provide in the future. And finally, also very important, the partnership, multiple partnerships in the sense of learning. I mean, panel members have mentioned how they have their strong, very rich lessons learned, and also from Habitat for Humanity, very strong ethic values. So I think if we work in partnership and together, we can really achieve more, and then also accelerate in the sense of learning from the mistakes of ourselves and others, and then also mobilizing just a larger scale of actions, and not least also in the spirit of co-creation, including the people who are at the core in informal settlements and slums. So let me close with the vision statement we had. We would like to end marginalization of people and places, enabling spatial integration and a better standard of living for all. So really bringing all together. And I thank you very much for this forum, and I hope we can also count on this rich learning for this global book. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you for actually summing it up quite eloquently and bringing the 4 dimensions to highlight here. We are running against time, but if there are any questions from the audience, we could take a couple. Did you have anything to say, Ms. Prabhasar?
Just one quick question to the Tamil Nadu group. And I think, firstly, it was very impressive the way you talked about learning, because I precisely find that many bureaucratic organizations don't look upon themselves as a learning organization. So that was really wonderful. But in that same vein, I would like to ask you, state level organizations. You are not a city organization, you are a state organization. So what is your linkage to the settlements that you are talking about when you especially think about a people-centered approach and a transition towards that? Or whether that is best done at the city government?
Thank you for appreciating that we are learning. It's our learning process. One is like we are having our the type designs and the planning about the schemes at the head office level and sending it to the other districts and the other offices for implementing it. But while receiving the proposals from those locations, we see to that we have a checklist of certain criterias and then they connect it to it. But still, as you said, it is different from one place to another place. It cannot be centralized like this. Now with the guidance of our principal secretary, we are distributing the work to the district levels also, and we have a habitat committee meeting at the district level. And the issues are being discussed with the collector, and then the land is being integrated, the need of the land and the beneficiaries are identified with the help of the collectors, and then we formulate the scheme according to the requirement. Earlier it was not there. So we assume that according to the target of number of families to be completed in particular state, we go ahead with that. So now it is depending on the district habitat development committee, which gives the proposal to the authorities, and then we decide as per the requirement. If that district requires habitation of 100 families, the collector integrate that with the land requirement. If the district decides any other infrastructure facilities which have to be prioritized, it is decided according to that. Even the MLA fund, MP fund and all integrated with the housing scheme, because they are also part of the committee. The members are discussed with that committee and then they decide according to it. Even the resettlement and rehabilitation framework, which we are doing it now, slowly it's picking up, that also in future it will be integrated with the habitat development committee, so that every district will have an individual plan according to their requirement. I think I have answered your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Any other question? No. All right, I have the very enviable job of summarizing this in under 2 minutes. So thank you for a very scintillating discussion, and I'm really humbled to find so many different facets around housing, slum development. One common thread was that we need to put people at the center, build meaningful partnerships to see any sort of urban transformation. Also with Patrick highlighting the value, I think humility is something that really touched a chord with me. And of course with many other panelists that I'm sharing this stage with. We also brought our attention to the continuum of land rights to look at other forms of user rights, which is something that we can deliberate on as we move forward. And a big question of how do you design this space? What is that space that you design for people? What is adequate and optimum? So thank you once again. And I think that we can close the session now. With your permission, Chair. Yes. Thank you. And thank you, Kirsten and Patrick, for joining us and for waiting very patiently. We really appreciate your contribution. Thank you.